When my fiancée told me she needed a break because of some new guy, I couldn't stick around. I packed up, left town, and started fresh in a new city. But now, she's been showing up where I least expected, almost like she's stalking me. Her parents have reached out, apologized for her behavior, and tried to smooth things over, but I've refused to talk to her. I'm 34, and honestly, I'm still wondering if I'm in the wrong for cutting her off completely. Lauren's 29, and after everything that happened, I just don't know if I owe her a conversation. There's a lot to this story, and I'll try my best to lay it all out. I met Lauren at work back in mid-2022, and we hit it off instantly. She was charming, funny, and easy to talk to, and before I knew it, I had fallen for her. We didn't waste much time, we started dating shortly after meeting. But things didn't go smoothly for long. Early on, we had a minor disagreement, and instead of working through it, Lauren decided to end things. To make it worse, she caused a huge scene at work, right in front of everyone. I was hurt, but I wasn't ready to give up my job because of it. Not at first, anyway. As time went by, though, I realized I still had feelings for her, and seeing her every day was like twisting the knife. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I made the difficult choice to quit and look for a new job, hoping some distance would help me move on. But since we lived close to each other, we still ran into each other pretty often over the next few months. We started talking again, little by little, but even though I still had feelings for her, I couldn't bring myself to even think about getting back together. I was too hurt by what had happened. After a few months, though, Lauren came to me, saying she regretted ending things over something so trivial. She admitted that making a public scene at work had been a terrible mistake, and she told me she'd been beating herself up about it ever since. I could tell she was genuinely sorry, and something in her words made me believe she really meant it. After giving it a lot of thought, I asked her if she wanted to give us another shot. She said yes, and by early 2023, we were officially back together. A year later, things were going better than I could have ever imagined. We talked about marriage, planning a future together, and it made me feel ready to take that next big step. Determined to surprise her, I started working extra hours, saving up for a house where we could begin our life together. I kept my plans a secret because I wanted it to be something special. But then, out of nowhere, she asked for a break. Her request blindsided me. When I asked her why, she wouldn't give me a clear answer. Around that same time, I had noticed she had been talking endlessly about this new guy at her job. Then, all of a sudden, she stopped mentioning him altogether. That shift felt weird, it made me suspicious, confused, and hurt all at once. I couldn't ignore that nagging feeling, so I reached out to my friend Chloe, not her real name. She and her partner still worked at the same company as Lauren, so I figured she might know something. I vented to Chloe about everything that had been going on and asked if she had heard anything. She told me she didn't know much since she worked in a different department, but she promised to ask around. A few days later, she followed up. Chloe told me that Lauren had been feeling distant lately, especially since I'd been working longer hours and not spending as much time with her. But that wasn't all. Apparently, some of her coworkers had been encouraging her to take a break, claiming I wasn't as invested in the relationship as I used to be. And to top it off, they had been trying to push her toward this new guy at work, saying he'd be a better match for her. When I told Chloe about my plans to propose and buy a house for Lauren and me, her face dropped. That was the reason I had been working so hard. I wanted to give Lauren something big, something that showed how much I was committed. A couple of weeks later, Lauren called me and asked if we could meet. I agreed but made it clear that I needed to know why she wanted a break before we talked about anything else. When we met up, she told me she had felt like I was pulling away and that it seemed like I wasn't as invested in us anymore. I told her that if she had just asked, I would have explained everything. But it was too late. Then she mentioned the new guy. I said his name before she could, and her shocked expression told me everything I needed to know. I told her I wasn't an idiot. I had noticed how she went from talking about him all the time to completely avoiding the topic. She insisted she had never cheated on me, but I told her that looking for someone else the moment things get tough feels an awful lot like cheating to some people. At that point, I'd had enough. I told her I didn't care if she wanted to fix things, I was done. I was ending the relationship for good. The breakup crushed me. I was so hurt that I couldn't even stand being in the same town anymore. I asked my employer for a transfer and used the money I had saved for the house to start over in a new city. Chloe, the same friend who had been there for me, apologized later for telling Lauren about my plans. She said Lauren had broken down in tears when she found out. I appreciated Chloe's honesty, but by then, it didn't change anything. By mid-December of last year, I went back to my hometown to spend Christmas and New Year's with my family. Since many of us had moved away, a few friends decided to throw a party to bring everyone back together for the holidays. Somehow, Lauren ended up getting an invitation too. We barely exchanged a few words that night, just a quick hello in passing. But at one point, I glanced over and saw her smiling while chatting with some women. That smile, it brought back a flood of memories. It hit me hard. Seeing her smile made me feel exactly the way I had felt the first time I saw it. And in that moment, I asked myself, how messed up am I that I still feel this way? But despite that lingering emotion, I was still deeply hurt by how things had ended. Looking back, I started blaming myself. Maybe I should have paid more attention to how she was feeling. Maybe I should have told her why I was working so much. Maybe, if I had just communicated better, things would have turned out differently. Later that night, one of my friends mentioned that Lauren's fling with the guy from work had only lasted a few months. It didn't change anything, but it made me wonder even more about how things could have played out. After the holidays, I planned to return to my new city. I had taken time off until January 6th, so I decided to leave that Friday. I figured I'd use Saturday to settle back in and Sunday to unwind before jumping back into work. But before I left, a friend from home called me with a favor. He said I wasn't going to like it, and he was right. He told me Lauren was moving to the city where I lived now. She had landed a job at a company owned by one of her relatives and needed a ride. He asked if I could take her. I didn't even hesitate before saying no. The thought of being stuck in a car with her for hours was more than I could handle. It would have been beyond uncomfortable, just like that party, and I wasn't willing to put myself through that again. It would have been a nightmare. Just imagining being stuck in a car with Lauren for hours felt as painful as that awkward party, and I wasn't about to put myself through that again. My friend kept insisting that Lauren and I should talk, but I wasn't budging. I had made up my mind. After I got back home, I tried to move on. Last week, I went for a run, hoping to clear my head. I stopped at a park to catch my breath when I heard a voice I hadn't expected. "Hi." I turned, and there she was. Lauren. She tried to strike up a conversation, asking how I was and mentioning that we hadn't really had a chance to talk at the party. But I didn't let her get far. I cut her off and told her straight, I didn't want to talk. She tried to smooth things over, telling me not to be like that and suggesting we should at least have a conversation. I shut that down too. She asked how I could still hold so much anger toward her after everything we'd been through. But I told her the truth, it wasn't anger. I was honest. I told her that even after all this time, thinking about her, talking about her, or even seeing her still hurt more than I could handle. And that's exactly why I couldn't bring myself to talk to her. She insisted that was the very reason we needed to talk, but I didn't see the point. I just turned and walked away. Since then, Lauren has tried to approach me twice, and both times, I've shut her down. Some of my friends think I'm being too harsh, saying I should talk to her for closure. Others argue that ignoring her completely is cruel. But none of that is what this is about. I don't hold any anger or resentment toward her anymore. I've even admitted to myself that I'm not blameless in all this. But the truth is, talking to her feels like reopening an old wound that never fully healed. So, yeah, why am I refusing to talk to her? After reading through the comments on my post, I realized people weren't exactly telling me to talk to Lauren, they were just giving their perspectives when the subject came up. I appreciated the advice, but it didn't change how I felt. Update, February 2nd, 2025. Hey everyone, I just wanted to give an update and thank you all for your thoughts. I read every comment. I didn't respond to most of them, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't have much to say. But I'm really grateful for the input, it's been a lot to think about. After mulling everything over, I've decided to stick with my choice not to talk to Lauren. What I didn't mention before is that after our second breakup, I blocked her everywhere. I told a few people about it at the time, but I left that part out of the original post. Over the last couple of days, her persistence seems to have backfired. Some of our mutual friends, especially the ones who were initially encouraging me to talk to her, have gotten tired of her constant attempts to reach me. It looks like they've distanced themselves from her because of it. Even Chloe, the friend I had confided in, posted something on social media about stalkers 3 days ago. She didn't mention Lauren by name, but anyone who knew the situation could read between the lines. I've also seen a few comments suggesting that Lauren was stalking me, and honestly, it's starting to look that way. The fact that she conveniently moved to the same city as me and just happened to show up at the park where I was running? Yeah, it's not hard to connect the dots. To be fair, I do know that her uncle owns a company here, and that could be the real reason she moved. But whatever her reasons, that's not my concern. I'm not interested in figuring out her motivations. For now, things have calmed down. My friends have stopped bringing her up, and Lauren hasn't tried to contact them again. But that didn't last long. Yesterday, I went to watch a UFC event with some coworkers. The night was going great until I was heading to my car, and my phone rang. It was a mutual friend. She told me she had talked to Lauren, and Lauren had asked her to pass along a message. I sighed and told her to make it quick. Apparently, Lauren said she finally understands why I don't want to talk to her. She promised not to contact me again, but she still believes we should talk. She left the door open, saying I could reach out whenever I was ready. I told my friend I didn't have anything to say and asked her not to bring Lauren up again in our conversations. If Lauren was telling the truth, it was a relief, but I wasn't holding my breath. Something tells me she might try something else. Maybe she thinks that if she gives me space, I'll eventually come around. But that's not going to happen. That chapter of my life is closed. For now, I'm focusing on myself. I'm not even thinking about dating anytime soon. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that I need to take my time getting to know someone before jumping into a relationship. And another thing, I've been rethinking how I define friendship. Some of the people I considered friends have shown that they don't really have my best interests at heart. A few people in the comments suggested I try therapy, and I'll be honest, I've thought about it. For now, I'm giving myself the space to heal, but if things don't get better after a while, I'll seriously consider it. Thank you to everyone who took the time to share your advice. It's been more helpful than I ever expected. A quiet few weeks. Until February 12th. Lauren had been out of the picture for a few weeks. No one mentioned her, and I finally felt like I was getting some peace. But then, last Tuesday, February 12th, I got a direct message from Lauren's mom. She told me she wanted to apologize for her daughter's behavior and asked if I could give her a call. I've always had a good relationship with Lauren's parents. They're genuinely good people. Even during both breakups, they were respectful and never overstepped. I was tired of talking about Lauren, but at the same time, I didn't want to ignore her mom. After thinking it over for a few minutes, I decided to call. But I made one thing clear in my head: if this was some ploy to get me to talk to Lauren, I was going to end the conversation politely but quickly. When her mom picked up, she put me on speaker so Lauren's dad could join us. I almost expected Lauren to jump in, but thankfully, that didn't happen. To my surprise, the conversation went really well. They apologized for everything Lauren had been doing lately. I told them there was no need for that, but they insisted. They felt it was the right thing to do. They also told me they had no idea what was going on until recently. When they found out, they had a long talk with Lauren. Her dad admitted that the conversation felt more like something you'd have with a teenager, not an almost 30-year-old woman. But Lauren assured them that she would stay away from me and seek therapy. Everything that happened between us wasn't perfect, but I genuinely wish Lauren the best. I hope she finds happiness, wherever that might be. Before we ended the call, I made sure to thank her parents and let them know how much I admired and respected them. Now, I can say with absolute certainty, this chapter is closed. Lauren would never go against her parents' wishes, and I know she'll keep her word. Thank you again to everyone who offered advice. Your support helped me navigate through this mess, and I'm finally at peace. Story 2, My Stepdaughter's Betrayal and My Wife's Silence. I never imagined things would take such a drastic turn, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. This is where my next story begins. It all started when I discovered that my stepdaughter, Lila, had been manipulated by her biological father into pouring her tuition money into some shady startup. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, she said something that cut deeper than I ever thought possible. "Why don't you just disappear?" That came from Lila, during an argument that spiraled out of control. But what broke me wasn't just her words, it was what happened next. Her mother, my wife, Abigail, chimed in. "We'd be better off without you." I didn't say a word. I just walked away and started packing my bags. A silent house and missing memories. The next morning, I woke up to 14 missed calls. I didn't check the messages. Something felt off. When I walked downstairs, the house felt unusually quiet. But there was more to it than that. As I looked around, trying to figure out what was different, it hit me. The family photos. I stepped closer to the big frame hanging above the fireplace, the one from our trip to Yellowstone last year. The picture was still there, but I wasn't. Someone had carefully removed me from every photo in the house, leaving awkward gaps where I once stood. 3 years' worth of memories, wiped away like I had never existed. As I stood there, my coffee growing cold in my hand, I heard a door upstairs softly close. It was Lila. Her footsteps paused at the top of the stairs, like she was deciding whether to come down. After a brief hesitation, she made her way toward the kitchen, her phone in hand, avoiding eye contact the entire way. "Morning," I said, keeping my voice calm, though everything inside me was screaming. The silence that followed was thick, heavy with unspoken words and tension that neither of us was willing to break. 3 years of trying. 3 years. That's how long I had been in Lila's life. 3 years of building trust, one step at a time. Movie nights, helping her with math homework, being there when she needed me but not pushing too hard. I had tried so hard to be what she needed, without ever overstepping. But things started to change when she turned 16. I expected the usual teenage rebellion, mood swings, a little distance. But this felt different. It all started last week when I offered to help her with a chemistry project she had been struggling with. I thought I was being supportive, but her response hit me like a punch to the gut. "Stop pretending you care about my grades. You're not my real dad." I had heard versions of that line before, but this time, something in her tone was sharper. It was deliberate, almost like she wanted to hurt me. Abigail was in the kitchen when it happened. She heard everything, but she didn't say a word. That silence? It felt like a choice. Like taking sides. A growing divide. Things only got worse after that. The tension was everywhere, in the small things. Dishes left in the sink with pointed looks. Doors closing just a little too hard. Conversations stopping whenever I walked into a room. Even Abigail became distant. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she brushed it off. "She's just being a teenager, Evan. Don't make it about you." But it wasn't just teenage attitude. I could feel it. Something bigger was happening, and I was being pushed out. The final blow. Everything came crashing down at dinner. Lila was texting during the meal, something we had always agreed was off limits. When I gently reminded her, she slammed her phone down on the table. "God, why are you always policing everything I do? Why can't you just leave me alone?" "Lila," I said, trying to stay calm. "I'm just trying to." "To what?" she snapped. "Play dad? I already have one." She pushed her chair back, the legs scraping against the floor. "Why don't you just disappear? Nobody asked you to try so hard. It's pathetic." I turned to Abigail, hoping, praying, for some kind of support. But all she did was put down her fork, glance at me, and say softly, "Maybe we'd all be better off if you did." Her words hung in the air, suffocating me. Packing up and walking away. 3 years of memories flashed through my mind. The first time Lila laughed at one of my terrible dad jokes. The night she called me in tears after her first boyfriend broke up with her. The way Abigail had beamed with pride when Lila asked me, not her biological father, to help pick out her prom dress. But none of that mattered now. I stood up slowly, leaving my food half-eaten. "Okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Okay, what?" Lila demanded, but something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, maybe? Uncertainty? "If that's how you both feel, okay." I walked upstairs to our bedroom, grabbed my old duffel bag, and packed enough clothes for a few days. I could hear them whispering downstairs, but no one came up to stop me. My hands weren't even shaking. I felt calm. When I came back downstairs, Lila had already disappeared, probably hiding in her room. Abigail stood by the doorway, arms crossed. "So you're just leaving? That's your solution?" "You said you'd be better off," I replied, grabbing my keys and wallet. "I'm just respecting that." "That's not what I meant." Her voice trailed off, her words caught somewhere between pride and regret. But I was done. "I'll be at Jason's," I said, pausing at the door. "I'll figure out something more permanent soon." I hesitated, just for a second. "You know," I added softly, "when Lila said those things, it hurt. But hearing you agree? That broke something, Abby. A friend who doesn't ask questions." Jason didn't ask questions when I showed up at his apartment. He just opened the door and set up the guest room. That's the kind of friend he is. I turned off my phone and took a sleeping pill from my travel stash. I needed to shut down, just for a while. The morning after. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight streamed through unfamiliar curtains. I didn't check my phone right away. I wasn't ready. But eventually, I gave in. My screen was flooded with notifications. 14 missed calls. 9 from Abigail. 3 from Lila. 2 from my sister, Morgan. 28 text messages. 4 voicemails. I didn't read any of them. I just sat there, staring at my phone, watching the morning traffic below from Jason's window. My mind kept drifting back to the empty spaces in those family photos. Maybe those spaces had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. A name that still hurts. My phone buzzed again. It was Lila. Her name on the screen stirred something in me. After everything that had happened, I stared at it, wondering what could possibly be so urgent now. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Walking away isn't always the hardest part. Sometimes, it's deciding whether you'll ever walk back. Update 1, a bombshell at breakfast. First off, I want to thank everyone who left comments on my last post. I wasn't expecting such a huge response, and I appreciate all the support. To answer the most common questions, yes, I've read the messages. No, I haven't responded to any of them. And yes, I'm still at Jason's place. This morning felt like every other morning lately, me pretending to focus on work while stealing glances at my phone, wondering if I should break the silence. But then Jason dropped a bombshell over breakfast. Derek is back in town. He slid his phone across the table, showing me a Facebook post. A picture of Lila's biological father, Derek, at some local restaurant. 2 weeks ago. The same Derek who hadn't paid child support in 3 years. A familiar pattern and an unraveling truth. The same Derek who had missed Lila's last 4 birthdays. Suddenly, everything clicked. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my messages again. The tone of Abigail's texts had shifted. At first, she was angry. Very mature, Evan. Instead of talking, you run away. Then came the worried ones. Please let us know you're okay. But her latest message, that one stopped me cold. There's something you need to know. It's Lila. Please call. A visit from Morgan. Around lunchtime, Morgan showed up. She walked in with coffee and that no-nonsense look she always has when she's about to meddle in my life. You look like hell, she said, dropping onto Jason's couch. Thanks. Always good to see you too, sis. She didn't smile. I ran into Lila at the mall yesterday. That got my attention. How is she? Morgan hesitated. She was meeting Derek. For coffee. My stomach clenched. She didn't see me, Morgan added, watching my reaction closely. I didn't say anything, but she could tell. She looked hopeful. You know that look she gets, like she's afraid to get too excited about something? I knew exactly what she meant. It was the same look Lila had when she got accepted to summer camp last year, the same cautious optimism, like she was scared to believe something good could actually happen. Did you know he's been messaging her for months? Morgan asked softly. Promising to make things right this time? My chest tightened. Social media and a familiar trap. I rarely checked Lila's Instagram, but this time, I did. Her most recent post was a picture of her and Derek, smiling like they had just stepped out of a Hallmark movie. The caption? Real family time. The comments were filled with heart emojis and messages from her friends, none of whom had any clue about the real story. Jason, who had been quietly listening from the other side of the room, finally spoke up. "Remember what happened last time he showed up?" I didn't need reminding. Lila was 13. Derek had swooped back into her life with big promises, stayed for 2 weeks, and then vanished again. She had stayed in bed for days afterward, barely speaking. It had taken Abigail and me months to rebuild her trust, to convince her that she was enough. The text that changed everything. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text from Abigail. "He's asking her to move in with him. She's actually considering it." Then another message followed. "Please, Evan. I know you're angry with me, but she needs you." I stared at the screen, my mind spinning. I typed out a dozen different responses, but I deleted every one of them. What could I possibly say? "Sorry, you told me to disappear, but now you need me to reappear?" The whole situation felt like a cruel joke. A new Instagram post and old words. A notification popped up, another Instagram post from Lila. This time, it was a photo of college brochures spread across her bed. The caption? "Big change is coming. Sometimes, you have to choose your real path." Those words. I had heard them before. Derek had said the exact same thing 3 years ago, right before he moved across the country to pursue his true passion and stopped returning Lila's calls. Morgan must have noticed something shift in my expression. "What's going through your head?" she asked quietly. I glanced at my phone again, rereading Abigail's message. "I'm thinking about the day I married Abigail," I murmured. "Remember what Lila said in her speech?" Morgan nodded. "How sometimes family finds you when you're not looking for it." And now, I sighed, she's posting about her real family and her real path, while Derek plays Father of the Year. He's got her convinced. An unexpected call. Before I could process everything, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. "Evan? This is Miss Reynolds from Riverside High. Lila's guidance counselor. I know this is a bit unusual," she said, "but I need to talk to you about some concerning changes in Lila's academic plans and recent behavior. Can you come in tomorrow morning?" My heart sank. Of course. I'll be there. Something wasn't right. Lila had worked so hard to maintain straight A's since freshman year. She was laser-focused on getting into a good college. What had changed? As I hung up the phone, I saw Morgan and Jason watching me expectantly. "So?" Morgan asked. I took a deep breath. "I think it's time to stop being silent." A voicemail from Lila. Later that night, I finally listened to the voicemail from Lila. Her voice was quiet, hesitant, so different from the confident tone she usually had. "I know you probably hate me now, and I get it. I need to tell you something. About why I said those things. About Derek. Please call me back." Hearing her like that brought back memories of the 13-year-old girl who used to check the mailbox every day, hoping for a letter from her dad that never came. I had a meeting with Miss Reynolds at 9 a.m. tomorrow. After that? It was time for some honest conversations. A text from Derek and a familiar pattern. As I set my phone down, another notification popped up. A text from Derek. "Great news. Big announcement at dinner tomorrow night." I was still part of the family group chat. I had a feeling I knew exactly what his big announcement was going to be. But this time, I wasn't going to let history repeat itself. Update 2, What happened at Riverside High. I spent an hour trying to figure out how to write this update. The meeting with Miss Reynolds revealed something I hadn't expected. And what happened next? Well, let me start at the beginning. A reality check at school. I arrived at Riverside High early, watching as students rushed to their first classes. Some of Lila's classmates recognized me. Their quick glances and hushed whispers told me that stories about my absence had already made the rounds. Miss Reynolds didn't waste any time after I sat down. "Lila submitted paperwork to withdraw from her advanced placement classes yesterday," she said, sliding a form across the desk. My stomach dropped. "She's also dropping out of the French club and student council." "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "She said she's transferring schools next semester." My chest tightened. Lila had fought so hard to get into these programs. She had poured everything into building a solid resume for her college applications. The real reason. "There's more," Miss Reynolds added, her tone softer now. Last week, she asked me to send her transcripts to 3 different schools. Where? I asked, already knowing the answer. All in California. My worst fears were confirmed. Miss Reynolds studied me carefully. The same city where Derek recently bought property. That's when everything started to fall into place. I pulled out my phone and showed her the text from Derek, the big announcement. Let me guess, I said quietly. He's starting a new business there. Miss Reynolds nodded. Lila mentioned something about a startup. Said her father needed family investors to get it off the ground. Déjà vu and old scars. A familiar, nauseating feeling crept up my spine. The same feeling I had 3 years ago when Derek convinced Abigail to lend him money for a sure-thing business. We never saw that money again. I didn't say another word. I just thanked Miss Reynolds and left the school. A reckoning at home. When I pulled up to the house, Abigail's car was already in the driveway. I could see her through the kitchen window, pacing back and forth with her phone pressed to her ear. She saw me pull in and ran to the door before I even had a chance to knock. He asked her for money, she blurted out, her voice filled with panic. Derek, final play and Lila's desperation. Her college fund. Derek had been filling Lila's head with promises about this so-called tech startup, telling her that if she invested now, she'd make enough money to pay for any college she wanted. Where is she? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Having coffee with Derek, Abigail murmured, her voice breaking. I could see the weight of it all pressing down on her. I tried telling her it's a scam, she said, her words barely holding together. But she accused me of being jealous. She thinks he's finally stepping up. She said, at least he believes in her dreams. A moment of reckoning. I sat down at the kitchen counter, the same spot where everything had fallen apart just a week ago. Why didn't you tell me he was back? I asked, my tone softer than I expected. Abigail exhaled, looking down. I thought I could handle it, she said, her voice laced with regret. I thought, maybe I could keep them apart. Her eyes met mine, filled with exhaustion and guilt. But then you and Lila got into that fight, she whispered. And she said those awful things. I panicked. I sided with her because I was terrified. If I pushed too hard, she'd run straight into his arms. Before I could respond, the front door opened. Face to face with Lila. Lila walked in, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. She looked different. Her makeup was carefully applied, and she was wearing an expensive jacket, one Derek had probably bought for her. But her eyes. They were red. What are you doing here? She asked, but her voice lacked the sharpness I was used to. Are you really dropping your AP courses? I asked gently. She looked away. What happened to Stanford? Plans change, she murmured, still avoiding my gaze. Dad says. Derek says, I corrected softly. Something flickered in her expression. He has connections out there, she mumbled. The startup is guaranteed to. I leaned forward, my voice steady but firm. Like the classic car dealership was guaranteed? Or the food truck franchise? Her eyes met mine, but this time, there was uncertainty. Unveiling the truth. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder I had spent the morning putting together. I did some digging. I turned the screen toward her. Do you want to know Derek, current company registration status? His credit report? Or maybe the 3 ongoing cases tied to his last, guaranteed, investment opportunity? Lila's hands trembled as she took the laptop. With each click, the carefully crafted story Derek had fed her started to crumble. And then, she saw it. The lawsuit filed by the grandmother of his previous stepdaughter, who had been manipulated into giving up her college fund just like Lila. That was when the first tear fell. He said, her voice cracked. He said he had changed. A heartbreaking realization. He told me he wanted to make up for lost time, she whispered, her voice barely audible. That we could be a real family if I chose him. Her eyes lifted to mine, filled with heartbreak and confusion. He said, you were the reason he stayed away. That you took his place. Oh, sweetie, Abigail's voice was soft as she stepped toward her. But Lila pulled away. I knew, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I guess, deep down, I always knew. But I wanted so badly to believe. Her phone vibrated. Derek. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then turned it off, giving her space. "I have to go," she mumbled, her voice shaky as she rushed toward the stairs. I need to think." We let her go. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is give someone space to process the truth. Honest conversations and a glimmer of hope. Hours passed. For the first time in weeks, Abigail and I really talked. We talked about everything, our fears, our mistakes, and how things had spiraled so far out of control. We talked about Lila. We talked about Derek. And, we talked about us. A midnight text from Lila. Around midnight, just as I was getting ready to head back to Jason's, my phone lit up with a text from Lila. "I messed up. Everything's messed up. Can we talk? I mean, really talk. Not about Derek or money or anything. Just, remember how we used to get ice cream after my dance classes? You'd let me rant about school drama? Can we do that?" I kept reading. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm parked outside our ice cream shop. It's closed, but the owner recognizes us. He's staying open late, just for us." My heart clenched. "Lila's there?" I asked softly. Abigail nodded, her eyes misting over. "She's in her car. Probably working up the nerve to go in." "Just like me," I murmured, grabbing my keys. Midnight conversations and melting ice cream. That night, sitting in that little ice cream shop, everything changed. Lila talked. She talked for hours. She told me about Derek, his manipulation, the way he made her feel like she was finally enough. But beneath it all, there was fear. Guilt. "I wanted so badly for him to love me," she whispered, her ice cream long forgotten. "But I should have known, it was never about me." The moment it clicked. But then, she mentioned something that made my stomach drop. Derek asked Sophie to talk to her friend's parents about investing too. That was it. I remembered the lawsuits I had uncovered, the same pattern of Derek targeting families through their children. "Lila," I said carefully, leaning in. "What he's doing isn't just wrong. It's illegal." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" I explained everything: securities fraud, unlawful investment practices, the lawsuits. Her face went pale as she pulled out her phone and showed me the group chats where Derek was directly soliciting investments from kids. That was the moment I knew, Derek wasn't just conning Lila. He was setting up new victims. Taking action. After I dropped Lila off that night, I made some calls. Morgan had a friend at the SEC. Jason knew someone at the district attorney's office. By morning, I had a plan. Derek never saw it coming. Derek was too busy planning his big announcement dinner to see it coming. He had invited Lila, along with the parents of some of her friends, hoping to line up more investors. The dinner was held at an upscale restaurant. Derek was in his element, talking about Silicon Valley connections and guaranteed returns. I waited until the appetizers had been served before I stood up. "Before we continue," I said calmly, my voice carrying through the room. "There are some people who'd like to join us." Right on cue, 2 federal agents and a state investigator walked in. The end of Derek's scheme. The look on Derek's face was priceless, shifting from confidence to confusion, then to sheer panic. It turned out Derek wasn't just running one scam. The investigators uncovered 7 different fraudulent schemes across 3 jurisdictions. Every time he reconnected with Lila over the years, it wasn't about her. It was about setting up new victims. The classic car dealership that cost Abigail her savings? Part of a larger scam. The food truck franchise? Same pattern. But this time, Derek had gotten sloppy.